I've noticed my mirror has been off lately. It's easy to get lost looking in the mirror, a closed-off gateway to a world that should be the same as ours. But what if it isn't? The changes started small, but they've become more noticeable every day. What is this reflection? Why does my reflection smile back at me when I know I'm not smiling? March 20th. I've decided to keep a journal of the strange occurrences that I've noticed with the mirror in my house. I tell myself I'm documenting this just to keep a record of everything, but the reality is I'm doing this to keep myself sane. It has to be just a mirror, right? At first, I thought I was just being paranoid, but the changes have become too noticeable to ignore. You're probably wondering where I got this mirror. I'll start at the beginning. I found it at an estate sale at some small farmhouse in the middle of nowhere. Me and my girlfriend were hiking some trails a couple of hours away from town, and we happened to stumble upon the farmhouse on our way home. My girlfriend constantly rips on me for not owning a real mirror. The only mirror I have in my entire house is the mirror in the bathroom. She basically demanded that we check out the sale and see if we could find a mirror for my house. There were some people there, but it wasn't really busy. Down in the basement there was a ton of junk, and not just trash or normal clutter that people have. This was all stuff from the circus. It looked authentic, and I admit, part of me wanted it just because it looked cool. In the back of the basement was a small room, and in this room it was filled with antiques that hadn't been touched in decades. Everything was covered with layers of dust and cobwebs. In the back corner, I noticed a small glimmer hit my eye. It was a beautiful antique mirror. It was one of those large standing mirrors with a beautiful and intricate design that was carved on the frame. I found the woman running the estate sale, and she seemed confused when I asked about the price of the mirror. She followed me into the basement, and she said that she didn't even know the mirror was in the basement. She told me I could have it for $20, and I jumped on the chance. I know sometimes mirrors in stores are outrageously priced, so getting this mirror for this price seemed like highway robbery. I brought the mirror home, cleaned it up, and hung it on my wall. My girlfriend was happy. She said that she could actually stay overnight now. Since I had a mirror, she could use it to get ready in the morning. I'm sure it's unrelated and most likely a coincidence, but ever since I hung up that mirror, which was about a week ago now, I haven't been able to sleep. That brings me to a few days ago when I first noticed the mirror wasn't quite right. I was using it to get ready, and I noticed in the reflection of the mirror, behind me, the painting on the living room wall was crooked. I turned around and walked over to the painting to fix it, and I was surprised to see that the painting was completely straight. I looked back at the mirror, and the painting was crooked still. I was a little unnerved, but I wasn't scared. Why would I be? I'm sure it could be explained by some sort of science that I don't understand. I told myself it was an old mirror, and maybe the way the light reflected off of it distorted the images somehow. I know how crazy that sounds, but I wasn't going to let my mind get away from me over something so small. A few days passed, and that brings me to last night. I eventually was able to ignore the crooked painting, but then I noticed something that I couldn't ignore. Something I don't want to mention to anybody, hence why I'm writing this down. The reflection that was looking back at me somehow wasn't me. Now, I know how that sounds, but it's the truth. I didn't notice it right away because I was fixing my shirt and making sure my clothes looked okay. And that's when I looked up and made eye contact with my reflection of myself in the mirror. I was smiling in the mirror, but I knew that I wasn't smiling. Every single detail of my movement was exactly the same, except for my smile. The reflection of me continued smiling no matter what facial gestures I was making. I admit, I was scared, and I didn't know what to do. I ended up throwing a blanket over the mirror. It was a small fix, but for the time being, it helped me to relax and not feel so crazy about everything that I was experiencing. I don't know what's going on. Maybe I am crazy. March 21st. I didn't look at the mirror all day. I was too scared. Last night I had a dream and I have a hard time trying to explain it. I'm still scared to mention anything to my girlfriend or any other friends in fear that they will think I'm crazy. In my dream, I was looking into my dark bedroom. Someone was lying in my bed, but I couldn't tell for sure who it was. I crept closer to the bed, and what I saw was me sleeping in the bed with that same nightmarish smile. I jumped back, and the version of me in the dream opened their eyes. I woke up from the nightmare, and I was alone in my room. It was mostly dark, except for the slivers of moonlight shining through the windows. I scanned the room, and I felt slightly relieved for a moment that I was all alone. That is until I heard a sound coming from down the hall. It could have been anything, I suppose, but it sounded just like footsteps. Trying to convince myself that all of this weird nonsense that was happening to me was a combination of stress and anxiety, I decided to prove to myself that nobody was in my house, and my mind was simply playing tricks on me. I slowly opened the bedroom door, revealing the long and almost pitch black hallway. I grabbed a bat that I used for softball that was in my bedroom, and I started to take a few soft and slow steps trying to sneak down the hall. The hallway is a long and narrow path that leads to the living room. The hall is around 10 feet from the bedroom door to the living room. A few steps into the hall, a figure ran by the living room opening, and I froze in my tracks. And despite all the weirdness happening in my life, I know that I saw someone run by. There was no mistaking that. I grabbed my bat and got my body into position to swing at the potential intruder. I ran down the rest of the hall, and in the living room, I found no intruder or signs of forced entry. Instead, what I found was potentially much worse. The blanket on the mirror was now on the ground, and the mirror was crooked on the wall. I went over to fix the mirror, and as I straightened it out, looking back at me was the reflection, and they were smiling even bigger than before. I jumped back in fear, but the most disturbing part of this interaction was that the reflection didn't move. The mirror version of me was no longer a reflection. The dark entity stood in the mirror, smiling and looking at me. I rushed to grab the blanket, and as soon as I covered the mirror, I noticed a quick glimpse of the surroundings in the mirror. At a quick glance, everything in the reflection looked destroyed, knocked over, and just wrong. Not a reflection of my reality, but instead, a window to something dark and wrong. Today my girlfriend is coming over, and I'll tell her everything. I hope when I write again, I still have a girlfriend, and she doesn't think I'm crazy because honestly, I'm not so sure.